Hello, my name is Kay Molaski. I'm the Trade Relations and Education Manager for the Duckhorn Portfolio. The Duckhorn Portfolio began here at Duckhorn Vineyards in 1976 when Dan and Margaret Duckhorn opened their first business. I'm at Duckhorn Vineyards today recording this little message at the request of our friend Mina, who asked for some information about four wines being utilized in a program there in your town. So thank you so much for tuning into this. This is our state house and our grounds at Duckhorn Vineyards, a beautiful place to do this morning. Come on in and join me, and we're going to taste these four wines together. So as you can see, we're now inside the tasting room at Duckhorn Vineyards here in Napa Valley. Beautiful place to share our wines and our story with our guests. And we certainly want to invite you back to see us as soon as we are able to have visitors on property again. So this morning, we're tasting through 3 Cabernet Sauvignons made by our company and 1 Merlot. The Duckhorn portfolio is actually comprised of 8 wineries. And this morning, we get to talk about 3 of those. We've been deeply involved in the making of Merlot at Duckhorn Vineyards since our very first vintage in 1978. If you know anything about Duckhorn Vineyards, my assumption is you might know a thing or two about our very highly regarded Merlot program. Our founder, Dan Duckhorn, is sometimes referred to as Mr. Merlot for his enthusiasm and advocacy for this important varietal. So one of the wines that you have the chance to enjoy this afternoon or whenever you're tasting is 2017 Duckhorn Vineyards Napa Valley Merlot. I want to point out that another concept for our company that's worked really well for us for 43 vintages is even though we make wine at 8 separate wineries, we have a dedicated winemaker per winery, almost like having a collection of chefs or artists that are behind these wines. So since we're tasting 2 wines today from Duckhorn Vineyards, 1 wine from Decoy Limited, and 1 wine from Canvasback, we're actually tasting the work of 3 different winemakers. Interesting concept. So the Napa Valley Merlot from Duckhorn Vineyards, as well as the Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon from Duckhorn Vineyards, were both made by Renee Airy, who is the winemaker here at this business. So what are we getting at when we're looking to make Merlot? Well, I think one deep nose of it will start to tell you the story. Expect Merlot with a astounding amount of energy and persistency. Sometimes Merlot gets described as so inconsequential and kind of thin and watery that people look past it. And we would love to encourage you to see Merlot with the proper respect. It's a deeply important grape to all parts of the world. And here in Napa Valley, we really built our company on our Merlot program. The Napa Valley Merlot that you're looking at here is actually the top-selling Merlot in the U.S. at its price point. So this is a very important wine to our company and just delicious. You know, Merlot has some of the similar characteristics that we associate with Cabernet, but it's always on a more pliable and somewhat more generous mouthfeel. Pardon me while I taste this on camera with you. Mm. So think about plum, maybe a little bit of cranberry, and just a really pleasant earthiness in the background. We put this wine to barrel, all French oak, for 14 months. And the 14 months in barrel helped all of those fruit flavors kind of coalesce together into this generous, round, but structured, really impressive glass of Merlot. We'll talk about food as we go along today. All Duckhorn people love talking about food. So I just want to say that for me and a lot of people that write about food and wine, Merlot is one of the most food-friendly red wines you could pour for yourself or your guests. There's not a lot of places that this wine wouldn't be comfortable. Whether it's pretty casual fare, just like a good grilled cheeseburger, or you're doing something a little fancier like a bacon-wrapped pork loin. I happen to like Merlot very much with salmon, whether it be smoked or grilled. So there's a lot of things you can do with this. Loves to snuggle up with good ripe cheeses, like a good camembert, or even like a brie cheese with maybe some dried fruit on the plate, some cranberry and apricot. Be fantastic with our 2017 Merlot. I would point out that on both of the Duckhorn Vineyards 2017 wines, you're going to see a little glorifier in the corner of the label indicating 40th harvest. And that is because in 2017, we were actually in the midst of our 40th harvest here at this property. And we wanted to celebrate that accomplishment with that little glorifier. So the first wine to think about today, a real staple in our portfolio, Duckhorn Vineyards Napa Valley Merlot. Just delicious, really, really good glass of wine. Also coming from Duckhorn Vineyards for your consideration is our 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon. I'm completely nostalgia nut and sentimental and soft-hearted, and I love thinking about history and achievement. So I keep things like this around just to share with interested guests. So I would point out to you that the very first time that Duckhorn Vineyards ever appeared on a wine shelf, here's what it looked like. So you can see that we've been utilizing that yellow paper, and that is a mallard duck for you trivia fans out there. There's a great question. What kind of duck has been paddling on the Duckhorn Vineyards label since first vintage in 1978? And the answer, to impress your friends and family, is a mallard duck. This is an empty bottle from our inaugural vintage 1978 Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. I show this to you so that perhaps you can get into your mind the idea that this 2017 vintage Cabernet Sauvignon is informed by everything we've learned over the last 40 years about farming and making Cabernet Sauvignon in this beautiful valley. So Cabernet is definitely part of our secret sauce here. And whenever I take a look at the 17 Cabernet Sauvignon, so aromatically, think about it's certainly black cherry, but also maybe some more spicy undertone. And some of it is barrel spice. Some of it is the use of Cabernet Franc that gives this something that's even more like bay leaf, or even a little bit of a minty quality to it. Cherry for sure. This is sourced from vineyards as far north as the Calistoga end of the Napa Valley, where we get warmer temperatures and kind of more robust fruit flavors. And then there's also Cabernet in this from some of the really valuable mid-valley areas like Rutherford and Oakville. Duckhorn Cabernet Sauvignon is classic, balanced, and really elegant. You know, Cabernet Sauvignon can sometimes be kind of almost histrionic. It can be so tannic and so big-bodied that just a little of it goes a long way. What Renee wants to make, and does make for us with great consistency, is something that seems as if the rough edges have really been sanded down. Think about taking an emery board all around the edges, so we end up with something really refined and polished. This 17 Cabernet, I actually heard Renee remark in an interview she was in a couple of weeks ago, and she's been making our wines now for about 14 years, first as assistant winemaker and then winemaker. And to her, in her opinion, this 17 Cabernet Sauvignon is her favorite Napa Valley Cabernet from us in about 5 to 6 years. So please don't miss the opportunity to give this a try. It has that really nice wide mid palate, but it finishes rather lifted and with a lot of energy. It has a lot of verve and confidence, but it's not overdone. Renee talks a lot about the idea of restraint, and it's a concept that I think sometimes gets left out of wine appreciation. It's not always everything you do, but it's also the things that you don't do, like not putting your foot into the gas so heavily. So she has just a really beautifully balanced and polished, sophisticated presentation of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. So the first two wines, both made here at Duckhorn Vineyards by Renee Airy. Continuing our exploration, really excited to talk about an extension of our very, very popular Decoy brand. My assumption is some of you may have some familiarity with Decoy, considering that Decoy is such a juggernaut across the U.S., extremely important brand in our company. And we've been making the wines at Decoy since 1988. Dan Duckhorn imagined a second label in his portfolio, a label that could always focus on luxury tier winemaking, all of the trappings that go with that, high-end vineyard sourcing, extraordinary barrel program, very exacting production standards, but it was always about trying to keep the price point within reach. So we say that Decoy is everyday wine for the well-informed. Affordable luxuries is another way to think about it. You may recognize that decoy is the inanimate object you hunt for ducks with, and this avid duck hunter chose to name this brand Decoy because these wines perform so well they could be kind of confused with something greater than themselves. So in our love of the Decoy brand and wanting to give Decoy fans a way to step up inside the Decoy brand, this is a new extension from Decoy. We're calling these wines Decoy Limited. There's actually 4 wines in the Decoy Limited program, and this is the Decoy Limited Cabernet Sauvignon. Initial vintage, this is the first time to do it. This is from 2018, and this is also a Napa Valley appellated wine, but we're changing winemakers here. This shows off the talents of Dana Epperson. She's the guiding force behind the Decoy program, and what we're trying for here with Decoy Limited is to get you the power and the sort of the impact of a Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, but Decoy is always about accessibility, sort of friendliness and fruit forwardness. So think about a Cabernet Sauvignon that's really friendly and open. Gosh, just really, really appealing. I get kind of more blue fruits with this, like maybe something more like blueberry, and even maybe a little olive or green, like green bell pepper slightly. I like Cabernet Sauvignon, just thinking about all 3 of these. Blue cheeses are, maybe blue label blue cheeses are always really, really good with Cabernet Sauvignon. Certainly anything in a beef direction, whether it be something as simple as like a bolognese over pasta, or if you're slow cooking some short ribs over polenta and mushroom gravy, one of my favorite things. And then again, you could also think about it with game. If you ever have an opportunity to have venison or bison, or elk, some of these wilder game meats, even lamb, are some of the proteins that sit really, really well with any of these Cabernets. That Decoy Limited is coming from some very, very exciting sub-regions here in Napa Valley, like Rutherford and also Oakville, and a little bit on Mount Veeder, and even some off of Howe Mountain. So if you're fans of Napa Valley Cabernet, I'm just name dropping some of the really choice areas within this valley that are so well known for extraordinary Cabernet Sauvignon. That's just delicious. And again, when you combine the caliber of the wine making, and then hook that to the price point, the Decoy Limited Cabernet Sauvignon is a really solid choice for many reasons. I'm glad that Mina has chosen this and put this in front of you guys. So the last of the wines to talk about today actually is coming from your home state of Washington. This is Canvasback. And before we taste the wine, to talk about the why of this a little bit. We are deeply rooted here in California. The whole Duckhorn operation starts in the mid-70s here in St. Helena. I was mentioning the fact that Cabernet has been a part of our world since first vintage. So we know and love Cabernet Sauvignon quite well, and we are always looking for new regions where we can take our passion and our knowledge and expand and grow and learn something new. So our executive team, led by our CEO, Alex Ryan, was getting very excited in about 2008-9 about wines coming from Washington State. And specifically, the region that was really interesting to us is the region that you see on the bottle that most of you Washingtonians, I'm sure, are familiar with. The Canvasback Cabernet Sauvignon is the result of our research and interest in the region called Red Mountain. Red Mountain is kind of in that southeastern corner of Washington State, north of Walla Walla, and it is the smallest AVA within the Columbia Valley. So this is what I like to call sort of micro-targeting. We went after this specific 4,040-acre AVA in Washington State because of the caliber of Cabernet Sauvignon that is coming out of that region. Very exciting stuff. In order to bring our dreams to life, we hired a native Washingtonian, a great guy named Brian Rudine that's from Wenatchee, son of some apple farmers up there that has spent his whole working career in Washington wine. And Brian is the founding winemaker for Canvasback. Named Canvasback after a breed of duck that's often seen in southeastern Washington State, and put him there on the label. We made our first vintage of Canvasback in 2012. This is the 2017, so we've just been learning and gathering more skill every year as we grow the Canvasback program. We actually did invest in an estate vineyard on Red Mountain that we called Long Winds, and the Long Winds fruit is in the middle of this wine. It would be the center post. Helping us put this wine together are other growers on Red Mountain. A pretty good acclaim like Clipson, Quintessence are some of the growers that are actually providing us with fruit for this wine. So this is this 2017 vintage. And I would also point out that since we are so excited about the opportunities in the Walla Walla area and what we're doing up there, there's actually a Canvasback tasting room that you can visit, and it's in Walla Walla on J.B. George Road. And if you're in that region and want to enjoy some Duckhorn hospitality and taste what we're doing in Washington State, I would encourage you to go by and see the team at Canvasback's Visitor Center. You'll find this wine and other wines we're making at Canvasback that are primarily sold just there in the tasting room. But this would be the flagship, Red Mountain Cabernet Sauvignon. Oh, so pretty. There's so much of that sagebrush kind of quality to it that I associate with wines from that region. Definitely red fruit, but then there's a certain minerality to it, kind of a dustiness. Oh, goodness. And there's such nice contrast between these three Cabernet Sauvignons. I hope you'll enjoy that too. Different regions, different winemakers, same grape, but each wine has its own personality and its own expression. The wines from this part of Washington State have this beautiful sort of intensity, but then they also have a little bit of an understatedness to them. You know, the Washington Wine Council talks about how this part of Washington State has sort of some of the qualities we associate with the New World, and then some of the restraint and the acidity we associate with Old World, like true Bordeaux wines. And I think Canvasback is straddling those two dichotomies really, really well. So that's some thoughts from the education manager from the Duckhorn portfolio about these four wines that are presented to you this evening, or as I say, at whatever time you're tasting. I got to talk about four wines from three of our businesses, but there is more to us. And to that point, I want to ask you to give your attention to our president and CEO, Alex Ryan, as he attempts to tie together, actually he does a wonderful job, of summarizing all of our businesses and what each one is up to.
Wine is not just a beverage, it's a piece of a winemaker's soul. and a reflection of the terroir and the vineyards in which it was created. My name's Alex Ryan. I'm president and CEO of the Duckhorn portfolio. The Duckhorn portfolio is a collection of luxury tier wineries, each with their own style, its own reason for being, its own authenticity. Duckhorn Vineyards started as a passion of an unsung varietal named Merlot, and it's really been our benchmark for well over 40 years. As one of the first early founding wineries since Prohibition, Dan and Margaret were integral in crafting what the Napa Valley is today as a premier and serious wine-growing region. Our wines are classic, balanced, food-friendly wines that show a sense of place. Decoy was established more than 30 years ago by legendary Napa Valley vintners Dan and Margaret Duckhorn. From vine to bottle, we craft our wines to the highest standards, only using grapes from the exceptional vineyards, including from our own state properties throughout the North Coast. We craft 8 varietally focused wines that are ready to be enjoyed upon release, expressing their full charm and complexity during their youth. The wines that we're making at Paradox are artfully blended, have been established a great reputation for their bold, expressive character and their food-friendly sophistication. The art of the blend gives our winemaker a lot of flexibility to create exciting wines, each with a unique story. The Goldeneye Winery was born out of the quest to craft terroir-inspired Pinot Noir that expresses the grape's purity and exudes a true sense of place. Our wines reflect Innocent Valley in its essence. The terroir, the cool climate, and the rustic elegance of a unique style of Pinot Noir that's found nowhere else in the world. Migration wines are defined by the idea of movement and exploring California's finest cool climate regions for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. The true elegance and the true sense of place come shining through. These wines embody the elements in which they are grown, in particular the Sonoma Coast. Canvas Back is exploration into an appellation that we passionately believe has a place in the future of luxury wines worldwide. The style of Canvasback are wines that are bold and structured with expressive red and dark fruit aromas, and we believe Washington has a noble place in the future of luxury wines. Calera is a pioneer in American Pinot Noir. Calera's founder, Josh Jensen, ventured off the grid high into the elevations of the Gavilan Mountains in California's Central Coast to plant Pinot Noir on the site of an old lime kiln. That area is now known as Mount Harlan. The Calera wines are revered by the Pinot Noir community and capture the nuance of the Grand Cru caliber vineyards to create sophisticated and intense Pinot Noirs that are truly in a class by themselves. Costa Brown was founded by 2 friends, Dan Costa and Michael Brown, who met while working together in Santa Rosa at a restaurant, and they pooled their tips together to buy 1 barrel of wine. The style of Costa Brown is defined by an elegant intensity, setting a benchmark for the quality of California Pinot Noirs year in and year out. We've set a standard for American fine wine for more than 4 decades. We craft wines of distinction from terroir-inspired locations. The future of the Duckhorn portfolio is bright. Our experience is solid. There's nothing we can't do.
Thank you very much for your attention, for your interest in what we're doing at Duckhorn Portfolio, and your support. Please enjoy these wines, and thank you for tuning in.